Okay, now that we have our second repository online at GitHub and we have our development environment set up with Visual Studio Code and extensions, we're going to learn some actual HTML. When you open Visual Studio Code, your most recent project most likely will open. If it doesn't, click on the File icon and then File, Open, and then you can navigate to where your folder is and open it up. Remember, Visual Studio Code can only have one project open at a time, and so usually it's the project you're working on. But if that's not the case, go ahead and make sure you open up My Second Repository folder so you have all your files. Your files are located in the Explorer. That's the top icon here. If you twirl out this little angle bracket, you'll notice that I have more files than you do on your repository. I have the index.html that says the hello world again, let's make another commit, woohoo. But I also have this .gitignore and this other folder, vscode settings.json. Let me explain these really quick. This .gitignore file only has one line in it. It has *//vscode/. What this does is it ignores this vscode folder. You say, what is this vscode folder? I clicked the settings button down at the bottom and I changed my font size to 36 so it's much easier to see on the screen. Once you change settings, it will create a new folder .vscode, and inside that folder, it will put a settings.json folder. Don't worry about what that is. All it is keeping track of your custom settings. Because we made a Git repository in this folder, Git wants to keep track of every time this file changes. You can do that if you want, but a way to avoid having all these extra commits just because you're changing the settings around for your interface, you can add this gitignore file and put in *//.vscode/. To create a new file, remember, you can click the new file icon right here, or you can just right click with your mouse or control click with the trackpad and say new file. Okay, so let's get back to our index.html. If you don't have your live server started, or if you don't see your live server in your browser, here it says port 5500. That means my live server is started, but I'd have to type in the URL in the address bar. It's much faster just to click this and stop it, and then it says live server is now online. I'm going to click don't show again. Then I can click the go live. That will automatically open up the tab in your default browser. And so now we can see in our local file, remember this is a local file on our computer, not on the internet. And here it says live reload is not possible without a body or head tag. What's a body or head tag? I'm going to tell you in just a moment, but I'm going to say I understand, don't show again. Let's talk about HTML and tags. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Hypertext refers to links. Most of you have been on the internet and used a link to go to another web page. Back in the day, that was called hypertext because it was hyper cool to be able to go to some other document. And markup language is simply actual content that's wrapped in things called markup that tell the browser or a computer what to do with that content, okay? So we just mentioned head and body tags. Let's go ahead and make some tags here. In the beginning, I'm going to type everything out, but as we go, I'm going to show you some shortcuts so we can save a lot of time and code faster. But in the beginning, it's really good just to have that muscle memory to type things out. So an HTML tag. All HTML tags use angle braces or angle brackets. I'm going to say brackets most of the time. Sometimes I might say braces. Sometimes I might say less than or greater sign. It doesn't really matter, and you shouldn't spend time worrying about trying to memorize what things are called. All that matters is if you learn how to use these things. So let's start with angle bracket, and let's type exclamation point and then closing angle bracket. So this is our first HTML tag that we've made. And what this does is it tells the document that it is an HTML document. It tells the browser that use this file as HTML. This is not an image, this is HTML. The next tag that we are going to make is the HTML tag, meaning everything inside this is HTML. So let's type in angle bracket HTML. And because we have auto close tags on as an extension, it automatically closed this tag. What does it mean to close a tag? Well, you see, this tag has angle braces and HTML. This tag here has angle braces / HTML, then angle bracket. Well, why does this one have a slash? Notice that it's symmetrical. This is the opening tag. This is the closing tag. Now you might say, Do we need to have a closing tag down here? There are two types of HTML tags. There are container tags, like this HTML tag, and then there are void tags or self-closing tags, kind of like this doctype tag or an image tag or a link tag. Don't worry about memorizing that. If you go to the Mozilla Developer Network, you can see a great explanation of that right here. So this is the anatomy of an HTML element. This is a paragraph tag. A paragraph tag is used for text. We will make one in just a moment. This has a P, and then it has the angle bracket here, has hello world. Then it has the closing tag, very similar to this one. Then it has something else in here. It has an attribute and value. We'll talk about this in a little bit, but this attribute and value is common in many HTML tags. It is used for CSS and also for links. This is an opening tag. This is the closing tag. This is the content of the tag. This entire thing from the opening to the closing tag and the content and the attribute is an HTML element. Sometimes you'll use the word element, sometimes you'll use the word tag interchangeably. Just know that element is the whole thing and the tags are the individual tags. So remember when we got that warning that it can't auto-refresh the page without a head or a body tag? Well, that's because you can't function as a human without a head or a body, right? So HTML pages are the same way. We need to have a head and a body. So let's go ahead and add those. Angle bracket, head, angle bracket, and notice it's closed that. So then below the head comes the HTML page body, just like you, unless you're standing on your hands, your body is below your head. So we type body, and there we go. So now we have a head and a body. Notice that there's indentation here. The HTML tag is considered the parent tag of the head and body tags. The head and body tags are considered children of the HTML tags. The head and body tag are considered siblings because they're at the same indent level. If I put a bunch of spaces here, then I press Command S, notice they stay. We want to make one change to our settings so we never have to worry about formatting our code. If you remember, when we installed the extensions, we installed the extension Prettier. So click the little gear icon, and go to Settings, Formatting, and click this box, Format on Save. Close the settings. Now if I save my HTML page, it will automatically format everything, which is really nice. So let's add a new tag into the body. Remember that paragraph tag from the Mozilla Developer Network? Well, let's add one. So let's do angle bracket P, angle bracket, and then inside this, let's type, this is my first paragraph. Typing is super fun. Now let's go ahead and take all of this. I highlight this text, press Command X or Control X on Windows to cut it. Then let's go ahead and underneath this body tag, let's add another P tag. And then Command V or Control V to paste. And let's save that. To have a little bit more space, I'm going to close my sidebar here and move this over just a little bit. So in order to get this to update, you need to stop and restart your server. So just click on the port 5500 and then when it says go live, click on it again. That way, when we make changes, it updates. So the server has to have that saved before it's able to do that. We have two paragraphs. Paragraphs automatically start on a new line. Above our paragraph, let's type angle bracket H1. Then we will type, this is a level 1 heading. Notice that it's much bigger than anything else on the HTML page. That's because it's a heading and the browser knows to render that at a larger font size. So don't worry about styling or appearance right now. We're going to cover that with CSS in the next video. Right now, we want to learn about HTML tags and the structure of an HTML page. And we're not going to go over every single HTML tag. There's too many. And besides, why memorize something that you can look up? There are plenty of resources online showing you all of the HTML tags. In fact, we're going to use some of these tags right here. Here is our H1 tag. Why don't we go ahead and use a different tag, an H2 tag below this paragraph. Type in H2 and then type save your page. If we navigate back to our page, now we see we have two headings and notice that they are different sizes. This is because there's a hierarchical structure to an HTML document. Before we get too far, let's add a couple tags that we need to make an HTML page complete. Because even though we have headings and paragraphs, a head and a body, we don't have everything that we need to have in our document. There are a couple tags that we need to have inside the head tag. So let's go ahead and add them first. So if you go up here in between the two head tags, put your cursor and then press enter. We need something called a meta tag. So type an angle bracket, meta charset equals quote UTF-8 close quote close angle bracket. What is this? This is telling the browser what type of characters that you're using. Most browsers are pretty smart, but this way it removes all doubt. UTF-8 uses most of the characters of all languages that are written on the planet. So you can write in any language and it should display correctly in the browser. So it's important to set this. Another important tag that we need in the head of the document is the title tag. Now I have two tags in the head. Now you might notice that these tags have a different look. This one here has this strange slash that was added by Prettier in the code formatting. This is because this is a self-contained or a void or a self-closing tag, and this is a container tag. This slash is not 100% necessary in HTML5, but it's needed in XHTML, and it's not a bad idea to have it there. So now we have our title. The other things we may add to the head of our document are links to our CSS file and something saying who the author is. But we will cover those as we get further along in the course and study CSS. There's one other thing that we should add to the HTML in the beginning. This first opening HTML tag, we should type what language our page is in. So we type lang, and there are language codes for all languages. This just tells the browser that this is definitely in English. If you're making a page in a different language, then please type in the language that you're using for the page. So this is now our first complete HTML page. Everything on here is enough that we have an official HTML page. So we're going to press Command S or Control S to save. And now remember, over in our source control, we have this notification. It's asking us to, if we want to commit our changes. And remember, you can do it in the two-step process by pressing the plus sign to stage the changes. Then I can put a message, my first complete HTML page, and then click the check mark. And now I've committed it locally. On my local computer, I can track the changes and keep track of what's going on. But I have not synced those changes with GitHub. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. If you look down at the bottom, you can see that there are no changes from GitHub, but there are two changes waiting to go. So I'm going to click. It will sync. Once it's synced, I can go to GitHub, open up a new tab, and go to GitHub. Now, if you're not logged in, you'll have to sign in. Let's go to my second repository. And you can see it has this gitignore file in there. That's so I don't keep track of my settings. And notice here on index.html, it says my first complete HTML page. This is great. It's keeping track of what's happening. And if we click on it, we can see the old history that we've done. You can see what happened. We took away this text and then we added a complete HTML page. Now let's go ahead and go to the settings. Remember, we made our repository public. So if I click on this link, check it out. This is on the internet. If you typed in this URL, it's going to look like the updated page. This is what yours will look like right now if you've committed to the GitHub repository online. Now you have a HTML page that is fully secure with HTTPS and the content you just made on your local computer. Let's go ahead and add some more structure to this HTML page before we start talking about how to style it. Okay, so I'm back in Visual Studio Code. And remember how I talked about how there's the head and the body and the structure of a page? Well, we can use even more tags to create a better structure. Okay, so if you think about a HTML page that you've gone to, a lot of times there'll be a navigation bar, then there'll be some content, and then there'll be a footer with some more content and information. We can see this structure all the time. And it's a very useful structure, and it's one that we're going to use for our portfolio site. So let's go ahead and start adding that in. We're going to add some container tags. And I'm going to show you a faster way to type. So far, I've been typing the angle bracket, and then typing P, then the angle bracket, and then it adds this in. Well, we can go even faster. I can just type P, enter, and it will do everything for me. So I don't have to keep holding the shift key and then typing those angle brackets. So let's go ahead and start using that faster typing technique. So I'm going to type header, enter. Notice that this is different than the head. The head is a special part of the HTML document. The header is an HTML tag that's inside the document. So press enter. Then inside this, I'm going to add a new tag called nav. And this is a semantic HTML tag telling the browser that this is where the navigation of our HTML page will be. Inside this, I'm going to type UL, then press enter. What this is an unordered list, meaning just a list of stuff that you write down on a piece of paper. If I press enter again, I can type LI, and then this is a list item. Inside this list item, we're going to get into the hypertext, what makes an HTML document hypertext. We're going to type A, then enter. Why A? Well, that's what they picked. Then here, hyperlink reference, right here, where are we going to go? So I can put https google.com. Then notice that this is the A tag. And then here's the closing A tag. In between this, I can type Google. And if I save this, and right now I'm looking at my remote one. We know that because it has HTTPS and the padlock. Here is my local site. Notice here I have Google, which is blue and underlined because we know it's a link, and we have this little dot. Why do we have that dot there? Well, that's because it's a list item. It's like a bulleted list. And if I click on Google, it goes to Google, right? So we've made our first link. Like, why don't we make another page? We'll call it page2.html. Now we have page 2, and if I click on the link, it says there is no page 2 HTML. That's because we haven't made it yet. So let's go back in our browser and then go over to the File menu. And then remember, we can click the Create New File button or right-click New File and type in page2.html. Make sure that your page 2 is the same. So if there's going to be a dash in between page 2, you have to have a dash here. I'm just going to keep it page 2 with no dash right now. So now that I have page 2, if I click on this link, it will go to page 2, but notice there's nothing on page 2. So we have to make page 2. What we can do is use a super simple code. So we could start by typing angle bracket, exclamation point, doctype, HTML, and then we could come down here and add HTML, and then we can add head and then body, but that's a lot of typing. Because we use this basic structure of an HTML page so often, there's a shortcut. So I'm going to erase all of this, and I'm just going to type exclamation point and then press enter and then save that. Now it has given me the complete HTML template, including a title tag, but also it's given us this weird extra tag. This is an important tag for having a mobile first design, and we want to be able to use our websites on mobile devices. So we need this tag. What this is a meta tag that tells us the viewport. Think of the viewport as your monitor that you're looking at right now, or if you're on a cell phone, the cell phone screen is the viewport, or if you're on a tablet, the tablet is a viewport, or a television, that's the viewport. Then we say the content of this meta tag is telling the browser how wide they should make the content. So we're saying make it as wide as the device. So if it's a cell phone, make it cell phone size. If it's a monitor, make it monitor size. If it's a tablet, make it tablet size. And then how big should it be? Well, you could make it 2 times as big, but that doesn't make much sense. Just make it as big as it's supposed to be. Don't worry about this tag. This is just the way it is, and this will make your site work on a mobile device with a couple other changes that I'll show you. So let's go ahead and highlight all of this text right here. Press Command-C on a Mac or Control-C on Windows. Copy it. Notice we have this tab navigation on the top. Let's go back to index.html. And let's add by pressing Command-V or Control-V. Okay, so now our index page has this responsive web design element right here. Now let's go back to page 2 and add some content. First, you always want to change the title. So now we have the page 2 title. The title is what shows in the tab on your browser. If you look here, this is the one we have online. It says My Super Amazing Website in the browser tab. We want to have a title that tells the user which page that they're on. So now let's go to the body, and we're going to create the header tag again. Then inside the header, we're going to type nav. Inside the nav, we'll type UL. Inside the UL, we'll type LI. Then we'll make a link and type A. Then inside this, we're going to type index.html. In between these 2 brackets, I call these kissing brackets when they're kind of kissing right there in the middle, we're going to type home. And if I save this, we'll see home right here on page 2. And if I click on home, I go to the index. And if I click on page 2, I go to page 2. So what we can do now is actually make this into a menu. So instead of retyping all this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this li, Command C or Control C on Windows. I'm going to go to the index, and then right above this, I'm going to paste it in by pressing Command V or Control V, save it. And if I go to Home now, notice I have 2 list items. This is great. We will often have multiple pieces of navigation that we can use to go to different parts of our page. Let's add one more list item. So li, enter, a, enter. Where do we want to go? Let's go to our portfolio. In between the kissing brackets, type portfolio. And now again, there is no portfolio page, because if we look in our browser over here, our file explorer, we have no portfolio page. So we can right click, new file. So now we have portfolio. And again, we could start by typing everything ourselves, but we can go to index, press Command A or Control A, copy, and then paste everything inside our portfolio page. So now the home page and the portfolio page are the same. Right? If I click on these links, they're actually the same. So let's go ahead and change the portfolio page to be different. Instead of my super amazing website, for the titles, I say my portfolio. And then for the H1, we'll, instead of saying this is level 1 heading, we'll say my portfolio. Save that. And then I'm going to delete all of this. So now here I'm on the index page. If I click on portfolio, we now have my portfolio. Of course, there's no content here yet, but now we understand that links can work. So notice that if I go to page 2, it only has part of the menu. What we want to do is make sure that the menu is the same on all the pages. So over here in the coding section, I can go to index.html. I can copy these last 2 index items, and then in page 2, I can paste them in. Okay, before we wrap up our basic HTML intro lesson, let's finish out the last parts of the structure of the page. So we have our body that's holding all our content, and then at the top we have our header that has our navigation, this unordered list, then our list items and links to go to different pages. Below the header, what we want to do is have a new HTML container tag called main. Let's go ahead and copy all of our HTML, Command X, and put it inside main, then save. If you look at home, nothing looks different. That's because this container tag is invisible to the browser, but it helps structure our page. Then below main, we can make one more HTML tag by typing footer. Inside the footer, we can add a paragraph, copyright. Then we're going to type a special HTML character, type the and sign, copy, semicolon, then type your name. If I save that, we'll see down here it says copyright Matona Authenton. So now in the footer, we can have this copyright here, and often we'll have the navigation in the footer as well. So let's go ahead and copy this nav from the header, press Command C or Control C, then press Command V or Control V, save. So now I have the navigation down at the bottom of my page as well. Here we have our H1 and our H2. Let's go ahead and add some content below. So now we have some content down at the bottom of our H2. So let's add some more container HTML elements. If you remember when we set up Visual Studio Code, we added an extension called HTML Tag Wrapper. So what you can do is highlight all of this, the H1 in these 2 paragraphs, then press Control I. Notice it adds a default div tag. A div tag is a generic container tag, and we could use that, but it's much better to use semantic HTML or HTML that has meaning. So we'll type section and save. So now we have a section here surrounding this H1 and these Ps. Let's go ahead and add another section down at the bottom. So highlight the H2 and the P, press Control I. We get our generic div container, but we're going to change that by typing section, Command S or Control S to save. And so now we have a complete structured HTML page. At the very top, we have our doctype. We have HTML. This opening tag goes all the way down to the bottom, so it's the main tag. Then we have our body tag and our head tag. And then inside we have our semantic tags for header and navigation. This is our main content section. And then inside it, we have multiple sections. This is great. So now let's go to the portfolio page. Below the header here, let's highlight the H1 and the P, press Control I, and then type main and save. Below the P, let's go ahead and add one of the most important HTML tags. I think it's probably the second most important HTML tag after the A tag. The A tag is the link tag. And what is internet without links? But also, what is the internet without images? Images of cats, images of stars, images of all kinds of things. So let's add an image. But before we do, we have to talk about how we structure our projects. When we're working on an HTML project, we need to put all our files in a certain place. So we're going to go to our file explorer of our operating system. And here on my desktop, I have my second repository. This has all the files we're working on, the index.html, the page2.html, the portfolio HTML. And then I have this image file on my desktop. I'm going to drag that into my second repository. Then inside my second repository, I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm going to label this folder img for image. Make sure it is in the second repository. See how it is underneath? Then drag your image file into the image folder. So here you can see this structure. We'll talk more about this in the next video, but now I have a good file structure for my project. I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code. And now if I look at my projects, you can see it has image and cherryblossom.jpg. Git has already kept track of it for our source control. It already wants to know about those changes. So on portfolio, I'm going to add our last HTML tag. I'm going to type img enter. Once we do that, we get a couple HTML attributes that we have to add. This src stands for source. So what we want to do is type img, because here we have img over here, and then cherry blossom. So we type slash because it is a folder. And look, Visual Studio Code already wants us to select cherry blossom, which is great. So we don't have to type that. If I save, the other HTML attribute that we see here is the alt tag. This is a very important tag. This is important for accessibility and in case your image doesn't load. This will be read by screen readers for the vision impaired, and it'll tell people what is there. So you want to type in a written description of the image. Okay, so now in my alt tag, I have cherry blossoms blooming on a tree. Now yours will likely be all on one line because I've raised the size of the font really big so you can see it on the video, and it's fine to be on one line. So you can see these dots right here. This is telling me that Visual Studio Code has automatically wrapped this, and it's basically all on one line, okay? And if I save this file, and I go back to my browser, remember this is my local file, the 127.0.0.1, and I go to Portfolio, wow, I see an image of cherry blossoms, but man, that's really big. How am I supposed to see that on my cell phone? Well, we're going to use CSS to do that. As a little preview before the next video, we'll add just a little bit of CSS. So right below this meta, remember this viewport meta? We're going to press enter, and then we're going to type style and press enter. This is a style HTML tag. Inside this, we can add CSS. Don't worry about CSS. We're going to cover that in the next video. But if you type following code, it will automatically resize images so that they fit on big screens and on small cell phones. So we'll type img for image. Then we'll use a new character that we haven't used yet called curly braces. It's up there by the P key. You got to hold shift and then press left curly brace. Inside the image, we're going to type with 100%, then a semicolon. This means make the image as wide as it can be. And then we're going to type height auto. Then it says make the image as wide as it can be, but then I want to see all of the image, so make the height auto. And if I save this, boom, instantly the cherry blossom image is the right size. Look at this. If I make the web page bigger, the cherry blossoms get bigger. If I make the web page smaller for my cell phone, it gets smaller. That is all because we added this meta tag, and now we added a little bit of CSS. Don't worry, we'll cover that next video to make the image behave properly. To finally wrap everything up, let's put this on the internet. So let's go back over to our source control. We have 4 notifications. We've been busy. And remember, we can click the plus mark to stage all these changes. So I'll stage them. And then I'm going to type in a message for my commit, created new HTML pages, click the check mark. Once again, this is only saved locally. So we have our track changes in Git locally, but we need to sync it with the remote repository. So click down here at the bottom. Once that syncs, we can go to our browser. I'm going to make this a little bigger so we can see. And this is our local site. And let's go to our remote site. And if I reload the page, it's not there yet because it takes just a second to load. So we'll go back to our Git repository. If we click on My Second Repository, it automatically created an image folder. It has our other HTML pages. If I click in the image folder, you'll see Cherry Blossom JPEG. It has the commit message. Everything is there. After a little bit of time, it'll refresh. And here we go. We can go to page 2. We can go to portfolio. And wow, look at that. We have online a portfolio that we have created. Of course, this is not a very interesting portfolio and it doesn't have all of our work and it's not styled, but we'll learn all about that in the next video as we learn about CSS, cascading style sheets.